Hi, thank you so much for joining in. Welcome to the conversation series of Air Cargo Africa 2025. We are here in Nairobi. My name is Libin Chacko Kurian. I'm a journalist for Stat Media Group. Right now, I'm sitting down for a video interview with the Chief Executive Officer of Fresh Produce Consortium of Kenya, Mr. Ojepat. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Can we start by talking about FPC Kenya?
Yeah.
What was the purpose with which it was built and how it is going?
Thanks for having me. And just rightly as you said, Fresh Produce Consortium of Kenya, we call it FPC Kenya, is a trade association in the fresh produce industry. We bring together value chain actors in the industry, fruits, vegetable, herbs, spices, and flowers, and those that provide services. And we came into play in 2013. And the reason why the association was formed is because we wanted to take care of the small people, the SMEs and the startups who did not have a place and a voice that reasons and speaks for them, particularly when it comes to engaging with stakeholders and particularly when it comes to engaging with government, because it was a bit difficult for small guys to walk into the government. And so there was need for us to get together and find out what to do, because then those that we considered the big companies already had their own organization, and they felt they could still be able to address government even if they went there individually. And secondly is because we needed to grow the industry. And for us to be able to grow this industry, there was need for us to open up the space. That time, the players in the horticulture industry, export particularly, were very few people. And we're thinking it looked like more of defined families or certain level of people that can get into this business. And yet, we are a country that is encouraging young men, women, and everybody to be able to do business. So we needed a platform that can create an opportunity for small people to do any business they want to do, as long as they're within the agri sector. And since the formation then, starting with few companies, today we boast with over 500 members, including the big guys who have now, those we considered big, are currently part of the consortium. And we do lobbying and advocacy. We look at capacity building, particularly technical capacity building. We do capacity building on standards. We do capacity building on market, and we do a bit of market linkages to different parts of the world and in different parts of the globe. Particularly the markets that Kenya has signed protocols with in terms of the trade for fresh produce. So we're in that space, and we're glad to be there. We have seen growth since then. I joined the institution in just 2017, end of 2017. And since the time we joined in 2018, we changed the name and rebranded. And so from 2018 to date, we have seen more than 1,000% growth. And we're still growing today. And we really have an opportunity to showcase what Kenya has to different destinations, even where we never used to export then. So that's why we exist, and we support the smallholder, we support medium, we support the big, we support everybody within the value chain, as long as you are doing business, either production, or you're doing aggregation, or you're doing exports, and also those who are doing support. And we currently have members who are doing logistics, who are part of our membership, because we need to ensure that we create a proper ecosystem that ensures that everyone within this industry feels warm, feels appreciated, feels accommodated, and feels there's a place they can always have their voice. So what we do is to amplify that voice. And then today we're looking at sustainability and looking at growing much even better. We're looking at training units and looking at now having devolved units to different parts of the country, particularly in the county areas where agriculture is very active, so that services to the people becomes easy. And one of the most celebrated achievement that we've made is we were able to open up the space for people to get export licenses. Now, anybody, as long as you're of age, you're 18 years of age, you're at liberty to start your own business, and you will get a license. Whether you have land for your own in terms of a farm, or as long as you're able to confirm and prove that there's a place you can source your raw material so you can be licensed. So that is something that we continue celebrating, and we no longer have to wait. And then that licensing process that will take ordinarily long, we have been able to cut it down for more than, I think we are now more than 70% of the hurdles that were there have been removed. So the period has really shortened. So we're glad with what we're doing, and now having a lot of business out there, being present in the global market, and just being involved in the regulatory framework, both in the domestic space and international space. We are happy that government and government agencies and departments have also recognized our work, and therefore we currently sit in certain different technical committees on trade and in agri, just to ensure that we are able to then grow our industry to the next level. So that's who we are, and we appreciate that we're here, and we're looking forward to such a big growth, and we would like to ensure that everyone, my joy will be that we should be able to have existence in most of the counties and have satellites, and also see how we can onboard as many people as possible, particularly the youth and the women. We want to see how we can grow their entrepreneurial skill to be able to get to this business. And for us, the more we have, the more people export, the more revenue we bring in, and it helps us to support the government also when it comes to the trade and forex. So it becomes easy to bring the balance of trade. What we realized is that we used to do a lot of imports, and we still do some imports, but those imports we do are much more machinery. And then we have challenges when it comes to balance of trade, because sometimes, and in most cases today, you realize that we have less products going out, particularly to areas like, example, India. We have a lot of produce, a lot of cargo coming out of India into Kenya, in terms of pharmaceuticals, equipment, particularly health-related equipment. But we have almost nothing going to India. So that makes business a bit unbalanced, and also the cost of logistics. So who are we and how are we involved? We're involved in the production area. We're involved in the logistics movement from the farm to the pack houses or aggregation centers. Then we're involved from the pack houses into the ports of exit, whether it's airports or it is a seaport. We're involved in that also in terms of logistics. So we basically watch over it, and we do not end there. We follow through that product to ensure that the recipient of our product in the market, in Europe or in Middle East, or in America, has received our cargo. They confirm that they received it in the right state, and that we have followed all the due processes, and that it's in the marketplace. And that's how helps us now to go through what we call now branding and positioning of a Kenyan product in the marketplace. So we're glad that we are part of it, and small, but today we look back and we are like, yes, it was worth it that we put in our energy and effort.
The Kenyan perishable exports a very important part of the Kenyan economy. Just the flowers account to 18% of all the exports from Kenya. So it's very important. It supports a huge number of people working in the industry. It's important for the economy. One important aspect of this thing is moving these perishables from the farms to the global markets. Most important market, of course, for the Kenyan perishables is Europe. So we focus on that maybe. But moving them from the farms till the last consumer, it's very important to keep them fresh. Compared to other commodities, it's very difficult to do that. You need to have many things in place. What are the biggest challenges from the perspective of FPC? What are the biggest logistics challenges of moving Kenyan perishables from farms to the global markets?
Thanks for that. I'll be honest with you, as you just said, that our biggest market today, as for now, is Europe. In the years to come, we don't know. But for now, it's Europe. We sit in a very unique situation. Generally, Kenya is warm, generally. And our average temperatures will be around 20 to 24 on average. And that means that you require to pre-cool or maintain certain temperatures from the farm. So our biggest challenge, one, is the infrastructure within the smallholder. Because those smallholders who have less than an acre need to harvest, and the products needs to get to the market. So getting them into collection centers or aggregation centers is one of the biggest challenges, because then we need to have that infrastructure right in front of them or within their network. And not just that infrastructure alone, but that infrastructure must have a cold chain, a cold store facility. And of course, the cost of energy to power a cold chain in the rural area with less than 100 or 200 kilos is not viable. And yet the solar system for now has also not penetrated so much, or green energy has not penetrated so much to some villages. And that means that is one of our biggest challenges. So currently, what we work with the exporters or the aggregators or the off-takers, because then they are able to provide refrigerated trucks or transport from the farm to the pack houses. And for the companies that have their own farms, those ones are a little better because then they're able to harvest and do the processing from their own farms and only pull them from their farms to the airport or to the seaport based on the port of exit. So we have the infrastructure at the farm level, particularly for the smallholders. Then we have the movement of the same product, because you now need to move that cargo from point A to point B. From the farm, just managing the cold chain infrastructure, it has to be stable before it gets to the pack house. Before it leaves the pack house, then to the port. That cold chain management is one of our biggest challenges, both in terms of the availability of the infrastructure and the technologies that allow us to deliver the cargo to the port without damage, but maintaining freshness, but within also our time. So we could have the infrastructure, yes, then, but we have then the logistics issues and the real movement. Moving from one town to a pack house. We have currently issues that we call roadblocks and way bridges, for example. The challenge is that we do not have green channels in some of those way bridges. Even if it is there, there's a lot of delay when you get into the way bridges, because you are queuing behind cement, behind stones, behind general cargo, and yet yours is perishable. So we're currently working. I know that government has committed to give us a green channel around the roadblocks, but there's one thing committing, but there's the other thing really ensuring that it works. The other challenge that we are facing at the moment is, of course, the cost of freight. Of all this business that we do, the cost of freight is substantial. After the energy, actually the single most expensive part of all this business is the cost of freight. Both by air or by sea, it's still heavy. Then if you couple it to now the cost of transport from the farms to the pack house, then from the pack houses to the next destination, that is one of the biggest challenges that we have in terms of really managing. But as we have the cold chain managed, it's also that. Then the other challenge we have at the moment in Kenya, for example, is that one of our airport is the only one that is active with exports, particularly for flowers and vegetables, and that is Nairobi, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. So we put a lot of pressure on Jomo Kenyatta International Airport and the infrastructure within it. So that's one of the things that we're looking at here, how we work with government to ensure that Mombasa and Kisumu, for example, and Eldoret, or basically say the regional airports, can then be part of the airports that can help us to offtake, so that we don't put too much pressure on Nairobi. So I know the conversations are ongoing. The wheels of government normally move very slowly, but we are getting there because then we have seen infrastructure open. However, it is not just about government, but also the private sector really appreciating that I can actually go to the other airports and get the same services as they are in Nairobi, because Nairobi people are now used to it. And of course, we have the issue of labor, workmanship. We have very good workmanship. However, you need to be very clear that you continue upscaling and updating them and training them. So that is critically one of the things that we do and that we will have to maintain. And the quality of people have to be maintained for you to remain consistent. If you look at most of the farms, most of their staff have been with them for years, because then they understand the real operation. I think for us, that's a big issue. Then the other big issue now we have is, whereas we want to deliver it to the market fresh today, maintaining that cold chain is possible. But we now have a challenge. For example, for those things that are going by sea, we have a challenge with the Red Sea. So the last year, for example, it was very difficult for us to be able to predict how long it was going to take us to get our produce to the market. It took 40 days. It took 48 days. It took some places up to almost 50 days, because then you have to connect from one port to another port, another point. So in the course of that disconnection, we lost a bit of time and quality. And yet also, none of us, I think so, ever thought we will ever be in this kind of a situation. So we had prepared our infrastructure and our psychological thoughts and every planning round about the normal 30 days that we will have. Actually, it was 24 days, 24 to 28. So our planning was like 30 days. And now you almost have to do double. And so planning also with the market becomes difficult, because the market is also not sure whether your products will actually arrive in the marketplace on a specific date, for them to be able to manage their backward planning and forward planning for purposes of the supply chain. So that messed us a bit. And of course, the last one, one of the most challenging part of it also now is for smallholder, is to maintain what we call a traceability system. A traceability system. Our products need to be traceable, and our products need to maintain a certain pattern. And so we appreciate today that the market is no longer interested in your product. The market is interested in the process until when the product gets to the market. What has happened? They want to see the journey, the story. So the story of how this product has moved from point A until it is in the shelves or on the table in the marketplace. So that storytelling and just showing people and giving people an assurance that, hey, we really maintain this is one of the challenges that we're really facing today. And of course, the regulatory framework that is not really ready for it, and because we didn't know. So we're not sure what to do, but these are things that we're working on every day.
Okay, you mentioned several challenges in between. Thank you so much for taking us through the entire value chain. First of all, you mentioned about from the first mile, close to the farms, the cold chain infrastructure, then the movement through trucks, air freight you mentioned, the alternative airports possibilities you mentioned. Two things. Do you see the developments happening at the Kisumu, Eldoret, and Mombasa airports happening, and what are the specialization they can be in? For example, are they close to any of the particular flowers or vegetables, which they can specialize in and they can focus on? For example, that's one question I have, and I also want to talk about how, because you mentioned about air freight and Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. I also want to talk about the Mombasa Port. How happy are you with that infrastructure there?
Yeah, thanks. Number one is it's possible to get Kisumu, Mombasa, and Eldoret, and we are encouraging. 4 years ago, we went around this country, and with private sector and government. And because of that, we were able to get Mombasa up and running in terms of the business and the infrastructure. But what we don't have in Mombasa is the cold chain. 2, the investors around about Mombasa, the production around about Mombasa is not there. There's nothing much. So most of the product that is exported out of Mombasa is from upcountry. So Nairobi, again, it has to be tracked down by road to Mombasa, which becomes a bit expensive because our railway system is not really working at the moment optimally to allow us transport fresh produce. Why? Because it was not designed. Okay, there are no locomotives that were designed to carry fresh produce out of here, out of upcountry or Nairobi to Mombasa. That development is now ongoing between Kenya Railways and ourselves and different actors to now see how our cargo goes by sea. So hopefully that will support the seaport and the transition from the encouragement of the sea transport. But for air, we still need to find out how regions like the Lower Eastern get their product. Their mangoes and their bananas out of Taita, Taveta areas, for example, need to go down to Mombasa because it's nearer Mombasa. Now, the motivation here should be there must be an investment of a cold chain because generally Mombasa and Kisumu are very hot. Even if they are not hot, you require a cold chain infrastructure to maintain the quality of the product. So the cargo around about those regions need to go down. 2, what we require is that the private sector really takes up the opportunity to do marketing and to popularize, and jointly, government and private sector, to popularize Mombasa Airport. The advantage Mombasa Airport has, for example, is that we have so many charter flights that come out of Europe into Mombasa with tourists. They have to go back anyway. So they will either go back empty or they'll go back with cargo. The choice is ours because they still have to go back. So we have a bigger opportunity down there, which we have not really taken advantage of. Kisumu is ready. Kisumu is surrounded by agricultural counties. I think Kisumu, people within that region just need to get serious. The investors just need to get to know that we have the infrastructure. And of course, the infrastructural development is gradual. However, somebody has to trigger. So our take is to see how the current companies that have invested in Nairobi Airport can start opening satellites, even if it's just makeshifts, or temporary operations in Kisumu and Eldoret and in Mombasa, just to encourage. That will ease pressure. Currently, we have cargo being driven from Mount Elgon to Nairobi, which is 450 kilometers, while Eldoret is less than 100 kilometers from there. So it will be good for that cargo to be consolidated there and shipped out from there. But of course, it requires that we have a lot of discussion between the traders and the regulators in terms of opening up that space for airlines to get in and carry the cargo. And of course, for the airlines to see beyond just profits today. But there's a lot of work that it requires to happen. So there's opportunity, huge. We actually opened up Kisumu. KQ flew to Kisumu. We opened up Kisumu. It's now open. We opened up Mombasa. Mombasa is now open. Eldoret, we are told, is a little challenge because of the runway that is being worked on to now extend the runway to allow bigger vessels to fly in there. But even as it is, we should already be taking advantage of the small vessels that are going there to open up. So I think from the private sector, we still have an assignment to let people know within that area that they do not need to travel to Nairobi to ship out their cargo. They can actually ship them out from. So that's the encouragement we are now encouraging our people.
Okay. How happy are you with the Mombasa port and the infrastructure available there? Because that's the main gateway for the whole East Africa.
The Mombasa port is good. What we need to do with Mombasa port that we need to continue enhancing is efficiency. We need to enhance the efficiency. We need to ensure that the cold chain infrastructure, not just at the port, but surrounding around the surroundings so that the holding areas do not have to be Nairobi. At the moment, we know that trucks come from Mombasa, they come up country, and therefore they just go as they go and plug in. They have plug-in points, yes, for reefers. That's a good thing, yeah. But how efficient can we make it? Then how competitive do we make it? How accommodative are we in terms of, not accommodative, how structured are we to just ensure that there's efficiency so that when I push my cargo in Mombasa, it's easier. But one of the most critical things that has happened is that when we went to Mombasa 4 years ago, I sat down with the authorities there, they accepted to move to increase the plug-in points. When we went there the first time, there were only 536. Today, we have more than 1,100, which has really improved. So now there's nobody who will take cargo to Mombasa and feel they're stuck. However, we still need to ask ourselves, what is our frequency so that we see cargo being shipped out more often. At the moment, some vessels only sail out on Friday, for example. Why do we have to have vessels sail out one day if we can have them sail out 2 days a week so that we reduce the pressure on business people to work within 7 days? Or if you do not meet the cutoff point, you have to go to another 7 days. So there's need for us to work with the region, Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda in particular. The three countries need to ensure that they consolidate cargo so that now that cargo will be able to allow extra vessels to come in, or at least ensure that the port attracts bigger vessels.
Okay, that's a very important point because you're talking about the capacity available at the port. Also, give me an idea about how concerned you are about the capacity available on the air freight side, because that was a big concern that I saw people talking about recently. How historically this has been a challenge? Can you give me?
It's something people don't understand. I used to make a lot of noise when it comes to that space, sometimes knowingly, and in most cases without really the sufficient data. Of late, we have learned, before COVID, which we all knew, but I think we took it for granted. Flights will come out of, and freighters, different vessels, will come out of Europe into Africa with different consumables, for example, spare parts. And we even saw a pattern where cargo will come out, those consumables and general cargo will come out of Europe into West Africa, down to South Africa. On their way back to Europe, they will pass by Nairobi and carry the cargo. And therefore, there was capacity that was going back to Europe anyway, right? And therefore, that made it easier for us to, whatever happens, first of all, it made us competitive. And secondly, it always allowed sufficient room, even if you did not plan very well. At the moment, we have a challenge because some of those consumables that used to come from Europe to some parts of Africa no longer come from Europe. They now come from China.
Okay.
Now the route changes. And when the route changes, it means now you have lesser vessels coming out of Europe to Africa, particularly this region, with sufficient capacity to go back. What we are not doing as a country and as a region is that we are not importing enough to allow capacity to be deposited here. Because even if we asked a freighter to come today, will the freighters be coming empty? Who pays the cost? Then we are also poor at planning. We do not give airlines and logistics companies sufficient data of what we expect when to allow them to plan with us. So that has brought a capacity issue. For example, a capacity issue during Christmas, a capacity issues during Valentine, capacity issues during Mother's Day, for example, when it comes to flowers. When it comes to vegetables, even now as we talk, We still have people who wake up and say, I want to sell my cargo to Dubai, I can send it. I want to send my cargo to Europe, I can send it. And if I have to send it, then the cost is this high. Why? We are poor at planning. We need to work together. And I think we need to see how the fresh produce people and them people within the general cargo in terms of imports work together so that we agree how much and when are you importing every week. So that when they import, as those vessels go back, they should go with fresh produce and support the belly. And then of course there's a confusion at the moment. People are saying, oh, there's a transition from sea to air, air to sea. It's a story that it has been blown out the wrong way. There is no way we are going to stop flying cargo. There's no way you're going to fly hubs, to ship out hubs by sea and expect to be profitable and expect some of those hubs to last in the flight in the sea for 30, 40 days. It has not even been tried. So it's new development. It is not going to be that we are replacing. We are saying it is an alternative available for 3, 4 reasons. One of the reasons is that now we are able to pay less freight and makes our product more competitive. 2, there are certain destinations that we can actually access by sea, not by air, as far as cost is concerned. Number 3, we are able to push more cargo out because then the sea can carry more if we plan very well. Number 4, we are able to deal with this carbon emissions conversation that's going on and see how we can reduce. However, from a personal view, flying is not going to stop because people are not going to stop flying. And the cargo in the belly contributes heavily and to the larger percentage to the cost of the ticket that you pay when you're flying. If there was no cargo, the ticket that you pay, you're using will be more expensive because that cargo in the belly supports that. So there's a conversation here. So in terms of capacity, we have faced some capacity constraint because of poor planning and poor communication between the business people and the regulators. And not just poor communication, the decision-making process within the government systems is also too slow. The regulators need to know there is a reason why we need extra capacity during Valentine, and a decision needs to be made now. So those are not what I would call technical issues, but are basically communication issues and decision-making from those in authority by understanding the business. And I think, in my view, some people within this business do not understand the intrigues in the business and the processes that go through in terms of approval of the aviation space to allow here. And 2, those who are in this business also assume, even our members, most of our members have one problem. They will show up in the morning with cargo at the airport. They will call the cargo agent, their clearing agent, get me space for 3 tons tomorrow. The clearing agent and the airlines have no clue what we have next month. So it makes our planning very, very haphazard. And of course, who faces the challenge? We face that challenge because then we are not able to ship. But just to wrap this up is to say, one, there is an opportunity for us to plan well, to work together, the government and private sector. There's need for us to provide sufficient data and information flow, both sides, to allow the aviation industry to plan. 3, there's need for us to get to know that we are partners in this. There's no single person who is superior than the other. We are all offering we are bringing unique proposition and unique, we bring our own uniqueness. I have the product, the airlines have the space. The government has a room, regulators to regulate, and the private sector have to do the business. So if we can reason that way, then there will be no clashes. We must just agree that we must seal. This is now the last one I'm looking at here. One of the other things that we're doing, which I need to volunteer here, is that we're doing a lot of negotiation with different markets, opening up new markets. We are now negotiating with India to remove the 30% duty on our fruits so that we're able to access that market, largely, particularly avocado. We are negotiating with different other destinations so that the SPS issues, the technical areas that have that hindered us from exporting to those destinations can open up. That will actually be able to address part of these challenges we have in terms of cargo. For example, as I said, India. India has no challenge in cargo coming into Kenya. And therefore, airlines, aircrafts flying out of India into Kenya and out of Kenya into India currently have an imbalance. When the 30% is removed, we will see more inflows out of Kenya into India that are going to support us in balancing that aircraft, the challenges in terms of the rates. Two, it is also going to allow growth within the industry, because we are seeing more people going to produce, because there will be more market, because we believe India is not too far. And we believe that India and Kenya have a uniqueness in terms of us being able to supply much more from the region, actually, to India than being selfish and assuming that we will finish feeding. So we have a variety. The last one I want to say is that Kenya is uniquely placed as a country to be able to produce anything in terms of fresh produce throughout the year, January to December, 52 weeks of the year. So anybody out there who is looking at a place to buy fresh produce from, then they should look at Kenya for fruits, for vegetables, for herbs, for spices, for flowers, and for anything called agri. You can have your product coming out of Kenya anytime.
Thank you so much for that responses. I believe you already answered some of the questions that I already had with me. So thank you so much, Mr. Ojepat, for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.